But before Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, WNBA tickets were averaging $89. The moment she went down, price crashed nearly 30%, plummeting to $62 a seat. That's kind of crazy. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously the biggest reason is
the WNBA.
Has the WNBA just witnessed its own financial and ratings apocalypse, shattering a brief shimmering moment in the sun into a devastating nightmare with the speed of a deflating balloon? Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, once basking in the glow of unprecedented attention, now finds herself at the helm of a league facing an existential crisis, as the very foundations of its supposed success are brutally exposed. What was heralded as a breakthrough era now appears to be a house of cards.
The WNBA and the Indiana Fever did not want people to know that Caitlin Clark was going to be out for the season. I can tell you, from the very day that they decided to let that go public, everything has dropped off a cliff. Views on this channel, the television ratings, the interest, Thanos snapped out of existence. People were trying to hang on to the possibility this whole time. Look, so many people stayed engaged with the team because they thought
the cavalry was indeed coming, but not in the way anyone anticipated. Instead, it signaled the arrival of an unprecedented catastrophe. The absolute catalyst for this devastating downturn was the Indiana Fever's official gut-wrenching announcement. Superstar guard Caitlin Clark would not return to action for the remainder of the 2025 season. This single declaration ripped the veneer off the WNBA's newfound popularity, forcing the league to confront a brutal, undeniable reality. Without their golden goose, their singular magnetic attraction, the WNBA is, it turns out, nothing more than an expensive niche sideshow that the vast majority of sports fans simply have no interest in watching, revealing a dependency so profound it threatens their very existence.
Late July, the WNBA proudly flaunted ratings for the All-Star Game, which drew 2.2 million viewers. Of course, they conveniently failed to mention that ratings were down 36% from the record ratings that Caitlin Clark pulled the year before. Early August, ESPN pointed out that the Seattle Spankers and the Indiana Felines, without Caitlin Clark, drew 1.6 million on ABC. ESPN claimed that WNBA ratings were up 20% over last year, mostly without Caitlin Clark playing. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, both the WNBA and the media have been strangely silent. I wonder...
The immediate fallout from Clark's season-ending announcement has been nothing short of financially catastrophic, sending shockwaves through the league's bottom line. In a stunning display of market rejection, ticket prices for WNBA playoff games have plummeted by an average of a staggering 30% overnight. Consider the sheer audacity of this collapse. Some prime playoff matchups, once commanding upwards of $200 per seat during the peak of Clark Mania, are now languishing on secondary markets for as little as $25. This isn't a minor market correction. It's a desperate fire sale, a stark, undeniable indicator of how little value fans perceive in the product once its main attraction is removed from the equation.
The WNBA are currently treading dangerous waters. It's sharks out there, y'all. It is sharks out there in the deep ends of that water. Reality is hitting, and the playoffs have the potential to expose even more. Ratings could potentially crash in this year's WNBA playoffs without Caitlin Clark. Networks have their eyes peeled to what is going on, and ticket prices plummeted 30% while Caitlin Clark was out with.
Even before the full season-ending news broke, the initial hints of Clark's injury trajectory sent the market into a tailspin, particularly for her own Indiana Fever. The team, which had previously commanded premium ticket prices all season long, saw their crucial road game prices crater by an astounding 71% the moment Clark was first sidelined, plummeting from an average of $137 to a mere $80. This wasn't merely a small adjustment in demand. It was a complete, unmitigated market collapse that laid bare the WNBA's terrifying, almost total dependency on a single player, exposing a fragility that even the most pessimistic critics might not have predicted.
And again, she's only on one team, but a very big chunk of the total attendance in WNBA is from the Indiana Fever. They have the second highest home attendance, and teams are literally moving arenas. So yeah, a lot of teams, whether it be the Lynx opening the Upper Bowl, whether it be the Wings, the Dream, the Sky, all of these teams moving games. All of these teams are moving games for the Indiana Fever, regardless of who it is. They all have to sell those seats. And a lot of people don't want to go, and it's super cheap. Like, it's a lot easier to fill a 10,000 seat arena without Caitlin Clark than to fill 20,000. So you're going to have to find a way to do it anyway, which is what a lot of people are going to be doing, trying to sell tickets.
The 2025 WNBA season was meticulously planned to be the league's crowning achievement, a year destined to shatter attendance records and generate unprecedented revenue, solidifying its place in the mainstream sports landscape. Instead, it has tragically devolved into a masterclass in how quickly an artificial, unsustainable success can evaporate when built upon such a dangerously fragile foundation. Caitlin Clark, a phenom who had remarkably never missed a single game throughout her storied college career or her rookie WNBA season, was heartbreakingly limited to just 13 games in 2025 due to a debilitating series of injuries. Without her magnetic, game-changing presence, the league that boldly claimed to have finally arrived is now rapidly and quite brutally reverting to its historical state of irrelevance, a grim reality that the cold, hard financial data proves beyond any shadow of a doubt.
The WNBA playoffs begin on Sunday. Have you noticed that no one is talking about it? This time last year, the WNBA was dominating talk shows on ESPN and FS1. Content creators on YouTube were flooding the platform with WNBA videos. This year, it's complete silence. Obviously, ratings for the playoffs are going to be a flaming ass fire. But if I'm the WNBA, I am concerned about...
Beyond the immediate financial hit, perhaps the most damaging aspect of this unfolding crisis is the complete, almost instantaneous evaporation of mainstream sports media interest in the WNBA. Major networks and influential sports commentators who had just weeks prior been treating the league as must-cover content are now cooling off faster than ice cream left in the sun. The very same media personalities who vociferously proclaimed the WNBA's breakthrough moment are now quietly, almost imperceptibly, shifting their attention back to more profitable and established sports coverage, leaving the league scrambling desperately to maintain any semblance of relevance without its biggest, most compelling storyline. Sports media outlets that had dedicated significant unprecedented coverage to the WNBA throughout Clark's meteoric rise are now dramatically reducing their segments, with some networks reportedly pulling WNBA content entirely from prime programming slots. The brutal, undeniable reality is that sports media follows ratings and fan engagement, and without Clark generating daily headlines, viral moments, and unparalleled viewership, the WNBA has simply lost its essential hook for mainstream audiences. ESPN in particular, which had strategically invested heavily in WNBA coverage during the brief Clark era, now faces the uncomfortable, financially painful truth that their programming decisions and the subsequent viewership were entirely dependent on one player's singular, undeniable star power.
We talked about Jason Whitlock disowning the WNBA. True to his word, hasn't spoken a lick about the WNBA since. Colin Cowherd trashing the WNBA. It's Caitlin Clark and only Caitlin Clark. Last year, he used to lead shows talking Caitlin Clark, talking WNBA. This year, with her injury, didn't even bother wasting more than 10 minutes talking about the WNBA this year. No Shanae, no Elle Duncan, no Monica McNutt. None of those appear.
Perhaps the most stark and telling indicator of the league's utter desperation is the horrifying collapse of viewership numbers once Clark was forced off the court. Games that would have effortlessly drawn over 1.8 million viewers with Clark leading the charge are now struggling to reach even 200,000, representing a staggering 89% decline that unequivocally demonstrates just how artificially inflated the league's popularity had become. This isn't just a dip. It's a free fall, even highly anticipated matchups between supposed rivals, like the contentious Chicago Sky and Indiana Fever, which previously generated massive ratings-driving battles between Clark and Angel Reese, are now drawing audiences so devastatingly small that networks are reportedly reluctant to even release the embarrassing viewership data, a clear sign of the profound crisis gripping the league.
Ratings for nationally televised games have mysteriously disappeared. I knew the WNBA lived in a world of make-believe, but I never realized they were magicians. It seems when ratings fail to meet expectations, the WNBA makes ratings disappear faster than pants at the Butt Bongo Festival. Sports Media Watch, which is the go-to source for sports ratings, Sports Media Watch, they have not updated WNBA ratings since August.
The catastrophic collapse in ticket prices extends far beyond just the Indiana Fever's home games, signaling a league-wide crisis of demand. NBA playoff contests across the entire league are now experiencing dramatic, unprecedented price drops as fans collectively realize that, without Caitlin Clark, the product simply isn't compelling enough to justify paying premium prices. Games that were once selling for $200 during the peak of Clark Mania are now readily available for a mere $25, and even at these drastically reduced rates, arenas are still struggling significantly to fill seats. This represents a fundamental, terrifying shift in market demand that threatens the WNBA's entire business model moving forward. What makes this entire unfolding situation even more infuriating is how utterly preventable it was. Clark's season-ending injury didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the direct foreseeable result of a league that demonstrably failed to protect its single most valuable asset, instead allowing a culture of excessive, often targeted physicality to flourish around her. From nagging quad injuries in May to multiple debilitating groin issues throughout the grueling summer, Clark's body systematically broke down under the relentless physical targeting that the WNBA not only passively allowed, but in many instances seemingly encouraged through its officiating. The league, which should have been proactively building robust protective systems around their golden ticket, instead watched passively as its entire financial future was systematically destroyed by poor officiating standards and woefully inadequate player protection protocols.
Now, you know, them Caitlin Clark tickets was hard to get your hands on. It don't matter if she was playing in LA, Indiana, Atlanta, Seattle. It did not matter. Afghanistan. It didn't matter. It was hard to get your hands on a Caitlin Clark ticket. Y'all see how many people showed up in Iowa? They could have filled up a football stadium. A football stadium. Super Bowl. Yeah, that is.
Commissioner Kathy Engelbert now finds herself in an impossible, unenviable position, desperately attempting to maintain some semblance of league credibility while watching the very foundation of the WNBA's newfound fragile success crumble in real time. The woman who had been confidently discussing ambitious expansion plans and projecting astronomical revenue increases must now confront the harsh, undeniable reality that her league's entire growth strategy was precariously built around one transcendent player who is now tragically relegated to watching games from the sideline. Engelbert's worst nightmare scenario, a league spiraling back to its pre-2024 levels of irrelevance, is playing out precisely as many critics had presciently warned it would. The league's desperate, often transparent attempts to manufacture alternative storylines in Clark's absence have fallen completely flat, with audiences yielding virtually no engagement. Despite concerted efforts to promote other talented players and craft compelling narratives around different team matchups, the stark viewership data unequivocally reveals that fans simply aren't interested in the WNBA without Caitlin Clark. This isn't a temporary dip while audiences adjust. This is a fundamental, profound rejection of the product when stripped of its primary singular attraction. Confirming the devastating mathematical reality, the WNBA without Clark generates the same level of fan interest as it did before her arrival, which is to say virtually none. The financial implications are also extending far beyond just ticket sales and television ratings, impacting every facet of the league's ecosystem. Merchandise sales, which had exploded by an astonishing 500% during Clark's rookie season alone, are now facing severe, rapid declines as retailers struggle to move WNBA products without the undeniable Clark effect driving demand. Corporate sponsors who had invested heavily in WNBA partnerships based on the unprecedented Clark-driven growth metrics are now urgently reassessing their commitments, acutely aware that their significant investment was tied to one player's star power rather than any sustainable league-wide interest.
Other than a Nike commercial, other than a Gatorade commercial, how many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one. The only commercial that comes to mind is the Paige Becker's Coach commercial, and they don't even put that on television. That seems to be strictly a League Pass commercial that they show us while we're watching WNBA on League Pass. Other than that, has there been any State Farm commercials not featuring Caitlin Clark that you've seen throughout this season?
Perhaps the most damaging revelation of all is the stunning speed with which the broader sports world has moved on from the WNBA, without Caitlin Clark generating daily headlines and viral moments. Social media engagement, once skyrocketing, has plummeted back to historical norms. Sports talk shows have drastically reduced their WNBA coverage, and the millions of casual fans who were initially drawn to the league by Clark's magnetic personality and game-changing talent have already and quite decisively redirected their attention to other, more compelling sports. This represents far more than just a temporary setback. It's a complete, brutal reversal of the hard-won momentum that the league had painstakingly built over the past 2 years. What we are witnessing is the complete, unforgiving exposure of the WNBA's fundamental business model flaws. The league that had been prematurely celebrating record-breaking attendance figures and unprecedented television deals is now confronting the harsh, undeniable reality that their entire illusory growth story was dependent solely on one player's individual appeal, rather than any genuine, sustainable interest in women's basketball as a whole. Without Clark, the league's metrics are rapidly and predictably reverting to their historical norms: abysmal viewership, minimal media coverage, and an ongoing struggle to fill arenas, even when offering heavily discounted ticket prices.
The whole sports media is upset at the WNBA for what they've been doing to Caitlin Clark. You hear me? Depriving everybody from enjoying the game of basketball. You hear me? She put women basketball back on the map. Yes, the WNBA has been irrelevant. And I'm glad everybody is speaking up. Colin Cowherd, Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless. Yeah, everybody upset. Bruh, like, these women, they so petty, bruh, and they don't even care, dog. They don't mind hurting themselves just to hurt you, bro.
The playoff implications are perhaps the most devastating and ironic aspect of this entire crisis. The WNBA playoffs, which should unequivocally represent the league's premier showcase event, its moment to shine brightest, are now entering their most crucial stretch without their biggest, most impactful draw. Television executives who had been confidently banking on Clark-driven ratings to fully justify their substantial programming investments are now facing the terrifying prospect of playoff games that struggle immensely to reach even 500,000 viewers. This creates a deeply troubling cascade effect where plummeting viewership directly leads to drastically decreased advertising revenue, which will ultimately and severely impact the league's ability to maintain the salary structures, operational expenses, and future growth plans that players have been actively demanding. The most telling and heartbreaking aspect of this entire catastrophe is how it unequivocally validates every single criticism that skeptics had raised about the WNBA's supposed breakthrough moment. Critics who accurately argued that the league's sudden growth was artificially dependent on one player's singular star power rather than any genuine sustained interest in the product itself have been proven absolutely brutally correct. The market has spoken with an unforgiving clarity. WNBA basketball without Caitlin Clark is quite simply a product that most consumers just don't want to purchase, regardless of how aggressively or enthusiastically it's marketed.
Fans shared similar reactions to the drastic change in ticket prices following Clark's injury. Because it's unwatchable without her, someone else added, did her injury deflate ticket prices or just prove she's the entire league's economy? Another person wrote, honestly, I'm surprised it isn't more than that. I would have guessed 50%. No matter what you think about Clark, she brings people to watch. We're lucky to be able to see her. I hope she comes back strong. You don't have to like her, but she is the headline and puts butts in.
Commissioner Engelbert's legacy will undoubtedly be defined by how catastrophically she mismanaged the league's single most valuable asset. Instead of proactively building robust protective systems around Clark and fostering an environment where the league's undeniably biggest star could thrive and flourish, Engelbert presided over a system that brazenly allowed excessive physicality to flourish while simultaneously failing to adequately protect the very player responsible for the league's entire, albeit brief, financial resurgence. The tragic result is a season-ending injury to the one person whose magnetic presence made the profound difference between widespread relevance and profound irrelevance for the entire league. The WNBA's current unfolding crisis serves as a brutal, undeniable case study in how quickly an artificial, unsustainable success can evaporate into thin air when built upon such precariously fragile foundations. The league that had been prematurely proclaiming its arrival as a mainstream entertainment option is now frantically scrambling to maintain even basic audience interest without its primary singular attraction. Ticket prices are in a freefall, television ratings are rapidly approaching historical lows, and mainstream sports media coverage is diminishing at an alarming rate, all because the league inexcusably failed to protect the one asset that made their recent fleeting success possible.
I will never understand why anyone in the WNBA picks on Caitlin Clark. I mean, I think we're kind of over that phase. I think people just know she is that person for the league, but she is literally the reason they're flying planes, charter planes to games. Like, she is the reason that they're on ESPN consistently. They're not on ION all the time. They're on ESPN, especially once the NBA playoffs end. They're on ESPN all the time. Like, that was not the case before Caitlin Clark arrived. And it still puzzles me that like one player transformed the league and like she was the chosen one. We've talked about that all the time here. But the bottom line is she legitimately is.
The harsh mathematical reality currently facing the WNBA is now undeniable, laid bare for all to see. Without Caitlin Clark, they are, with breathtaking speed, returning to their pre-2024 state of profound irrelevance at a pace that even the most pessimistic critics didn't anticipate. Ticket prices have completely collapsed, ratings have evaporated into thin air, and media interest has cooled off so dramatically that some major networks are now openly questioning their continued long-term investment in WNBA programming. The league that perhaps naively thought it had finally arrived on the mainstream stage is learning the brutal, expensive lesson that sustainable, enduring success requires far more than just one transcendent individual. And without that individual, they are right back where they started, struggling desperately for even a modicum of relevance in a crowded, hyper-competitive sports landscape that has already decisively moved on to more compelling entertainment options. The message is devastatingly clear. The WNBA without Caitlin Clark is exactly what it was before Caitlin Clark, a niche product that the vast majority of sports fans simply ignore. The ratings don't lie, the attendance figures don't lie, and the plummeting ticket prices don't lie. Caitlin Clark was, in essence, the WNBA's entire business model, and her absence has exposed just how hollow and unsustainable their supposed growth truly was. Until she makes her triumphant return, the league will, regrettably, continue its rapid, painful descent back into the sports entertainment obscurity where it spent most of its 28-year existence. If you found this deep dive into the WNBA's precarious situation insightful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more compelling content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next expose. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the WNBA can do to recover Or is it truly doomed without its biggest star? Share your opinions, insights, or any related stories you might have in the comments section below.